appreciate the opportunity, Roland and I do, for to be here in your inaugural webinar. As Karen mentioned, please bear with us if we run into any snags. We're still kind of probably working out some of those kinks, and hopefully we've done a little bit of that, caught some already, so hopefully we're on the front end of that. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you all. So we will be talking about Beyond Change Management, and let me just jump into the agenda here and just walk through that quickly. So first, Roland's going to go through the whole system transformation model and talk through what the different components are and what makes that a little different from some other change processes. You'll also get into some research maybe some of you have seen from IBM. I think this was in 2008, where they polled over 1,000 CEOs across the world on what their most pressing needs are today, and that's relevant to our discussion today, and Roland will take us through that. We'll also talk about some research around whole system transformation and some brief case studies of different engagements that we've been involved with. And then I'll kind of talk a little bit about change versus transformation, some of the differences between the two. And then we'll get into, Roland will take us through some differentiators for whole system transformation. Again, what makes this process different from other change processes you've maybe been aware of or involved with, or may be involved with. And then we'll take some questions. So we'd like you to think through, as we go through here, come up with at least a couple questions that you could pose as we walk through the presentation, and anything that comes to mind or areas that may be unclear that you'd like to talk about a little bit more. So we'll spend some time on that. And then we have a current client right now that Roland's working with, and Susan will join us and kind of walk through some of her case study. It's in the middle of the process right now, so she'll talk to us about that process a little bit and some of her things that she's taking away from that while she's currently in that journey right now with us. And then we'll talk about some resources to go. We'll also have a couple of questions where we're going to poll you related to your organization and how you see transformation developing there. Okay. So let's jump into the first part here. Roland, I'll turn it over to you.
Good. I assume you can hear me, Tom and Karen, right? Then others can also?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, whole systems transformation. I was in Mexico pulling together my 21st edition of the Competencies for Change Agent, and the 300 people that I spent with Dick Beckert, who coined the phrase organization development, and Kathy Dannemiller, who termed her whole-scale change process to whole systems transformation just months before she died, got a realization from the participants, and that is the #1 new competency that's needed for change agents in the future is being able to think systems theory, think the whole. Point 2, at the local quality meeting that Karen brought me to a year ago or so, the room realized that piecemeal quality efforts will be better if they're integrated with and harmonized with a whole system transformation journey. So let me hit some of the highlights. First, I'm going to go right to the middle. Perpetual change is what we're after. As I'll say later, the #1 need for CEOs worldwide today, unanimously, is they need help with change. The gap between their need for change and the ability to satisfy the need for change has tripled in the last couple of years and will continue to do so. And now let me make the statement that I've made to every group that I've spoken to since 1969, since I first heard this phrase, dizzying rate of change, from my mentor, Warren Bennis, probably the #1 organization development leadership guy who has worked with 4 presidents. And so I say this, more change will happen the rest of our lives since the beginning of civilization. Organizations who do not prepare themselves for change or transformation are not going to survive. GM is going through dramatic change right now. If they would have done what Ford did in the 80s, where Kathy Dannemiller discovered this process, they wouldn't be in the problem of having to get money from government. Because Ford reasoned for making money right now is because they use this process. Let's go to the 4 phases. You pre-launch, you set things up. Number 2, you transform the leadership. Number 3, you transform a critical mass, which Susan is going to talk about. We're doing, I don't know, 300 or 400 of 1,200 people in her IT group. Then we learn how to sustain the development. And the next circle is very important, and I think this differentiates us from most other things I see, is that in depth, Susan is learning to be an internal change agent, and we're setting her up to be powerful, and so that she can maybe even take this into other parts of the organization. And in her organization, other parts have already expressed interest. Let me go to the next circle. We always focus on some change given us by the client. Unlike consulting groups, the big consulting groups come in and they tell you what they're going to change, and they're experts. In this case, we're talking about quality on the right-hand side, and the ultimate aim that I believe, says Peter Drucker, is to thrill the customer, and we like to put measured results as another core piece. And this is all followed by plan, do, check, act, which I don't like. It's not right. You can't plan without diagnosis, Susan would say. It's malpractice. So first of all, you've got to scan, then you plan, then you create an action, and then you react the cycle, and you react to the action. So that's kind of my little poetic change model that we use in every conversation, every team experience, every event, and the system as a large. Okay, Tom, we're ready to move on? I'll go faster. These are the 4 key things. The full report is in the resources we're going to give you. Hunger for Change, I've said enough about that. What I have discovered, especially when I was doing my research for Karen, is that the key thing about innovation is employee engagement. And if you remember, we had a panel there, Karen, and somebody was talking about product development, innovation, and so forth, and it wasn't where it was at. We need to get the entire system to be innovative. Then the product development stuff will zoom. Next, globally integrated. Man, that's got to happen in all cases. I remember we did GMAC in Bloomington. General Mills was next door falling asleep getting presentations on PowerPoints for 3 days. And we were laughing and dancing in our area. And it was the first time that they realized through this big meeting that they were truly a globally integrated company, because we had Mexico and Spain and so forth coming in. And the other thing about the new research says is that organizations must disrupt themselves naturally in order to make change. Now we'll go next, Tom. And we have, I'm going to just hit research quickly. One of my greatest successes was with Barclay Bank in South Africa. 2,100 people, 3 groups, 700 each. We increased the profitability 69% in about 4 months. Every one of the other bank units, the 50 of them, only improved their profits from 2 to 4%. Allstate has just been awarded the Transformation System of the Year by the Best Practice Institute. We moved customer service from 77 to 84. We started with a group of 5,000. Then my person I trained as an external consultant got a $1 million contract to take it further into the organization. They're doing another 5,000 with the IT, and they just finished 500. And the results are continually to be absolutely remarkable. And I mentioned Ford. None have ever failed. That anything that Kathy and I have ever done, Kathy is, you know, she's the most powerful OD person for me and women, woman OD person in the world. She saved Boeing. So let's go next. Oh, next one. Here's what Kathy says about research. If you've got to move, Tom, if you've got to measure, you've just failed. So think about that. Change should be so absolutely obvious that you don't have to measure. And at 3M, the quality program is all falling apart, the Six Sigma thing, because they're getting no measured results. And finally, management is coming in and saying, what's going on? You better measure something, get some results. Well, management shouldn't have to do that, because at Northwest Airlines, the CEO said after our intervention, I'm ecstatic. And I wanted to have them spend some money on measurement, and they says, we haven't got time. Bob Dufek, who's now at United Health, said, I don't have to measure. My boss is happy. What else do I want? Okay, Tom, take us over.
All right. So change versus transformation. So we've probably all been involved in some form of change process, whether that's applied to a process, a systems implementation, some kind of product or service improvement. So we just wanted to talk briefly about the difference between change and transformation, which there are fundamental differences. So there's a lot of words here. I won't go through all of them, but differences between change and transformation on mindset. In change, there's probably not a lot of difference in change, in a change mindset. Transformation, there has to be a shift in mindsets around business paradigms, looking at new ways of doing business, new ways of process. There has to be a fundamental shift. The focus of the change, typically in a change process, is kind of that incremental. You're looking to do something better, whether that's a process, service, or product again. In transformation, you're looking for more of a breakthrough in those kinds of things. And it also brings in culture and behavior. So the focus is on doing it much significantly different in a lot of cases than maybe just better or being more efficient. The orientation a lot of times around change is project-oriented. Transformation, it's more process-oriented. And again, it brings in that mindset, behavior, and culture kinds of pieces a lot more strongly. The personal development that's required, a lot of times in a change, if it's incremental change, it makes sense, you accept, you adopt those changes, and you move forward. In transformation, there's typically a core team, and Roland will talk about this a little bit more going forward, but that this core team are typically leaders in the organization that have to really model how this change is occurring and what's different. They really have to live it. How change occurs, typically around change, again, it's kind of that incremental. It's done through training, communications. Transformation really needs to be, by nature, a lot more interactive and inclusive, and it's more of an emergent process that you may not know the end state when you get into this, but that brings into the next piece around leadership, where in change a lot of times it's kind of managed from the top. We want them to change. We want them to do this. Where in transformation, in order to get that sustainability, there has to be a critical mass, and that leadership, again, really has to model that change. And the critical mass, the people have to see that they're adopting it some form. They can't just be behind a curtain and expecting everyone else to change. The process here, again, sequential, linear. It's focused around process improvement on change efforts usually. In transformation, it's much more chaotic, rapid, and unprecedented. In results, you typically get incremental gains, and that's usually the focus. That's not bad. Those are obviously we need those. We need those incremental changes in processes to improve, to get more efficient. But in transformation, it's more focused on breakthroughs that really lead to more significant results. So with that, I'm going to turn it back. You have something on this, Ron?
Tom and I were with Dr. Tordahl yesterday, retired from the University of Minnesota in the top productivity guru of the world, and he essentially says the quality movement has destroyed American corporations. And what he says is that quality only has one focus, and that's zero defect. Instead, he says what needs to happen is that we need to get beyond just variance to innovation. And so he has log jams that he identifies, but then he replaces those logs that are jammed with new innovative stuff. And that's what really has to happen organization-wide, is to do that. So let's talk. Oh, now please type in what you think is the top 2 or 3 questions, 1 or 2 questions that the audience probably wants to hear, the participants here want to hear. These aren't your questions. These are what questions the system that we have connected here, everybody might be benefit from. And I say that just so that you start thinking systems. So that the next slide there, we were asked by Deluxe Check to come up with what differentiates what we do from everything else. And Tom did it so beautifully, identified 12 things. And when you apply all these together, it's absolutely different than anything else that's going on. Now, others are doing pieces of this, but not together. And at least we haven't seen it. And if you can have seen it, let us know. We want to join and learn from that person. Okay, next slide. I'm just going to hit really briefly some of the differentiators. Kathy Dannemiller said, everything must start with a compelling purpose. She used to spend with a design team a whole day creating a purpose. Well, Susan and I do that a little differently. And so it must be compelling, it must be dynamic, and it must be co-created with the entire organization, not top management, not consultants. Next is talking about, the top. So Kathy and I were with Billy Albin and Barbara Bunker, probably the three, and along with Edie Seashore, the four most predominant women in organization change in the world. Edie is the diversity woman, and Barbara and Billy have done just research on large groups, and they do large group stuff because that's the leading edge of organization change. And we were in New Orleans at the Organization Development Conference, 200 of us in a room for a couple of days, and we discovered all our problems went wrong when we did not have the top team aligned and with us. And so I refused ever to do that, go forth, unless I get that top team aligned. And you can see my client there, Al Arcello. I'm in the left, down in the corner, those of you who have never seen this fat guy. And we're in Vancouver building our team, making a meal. I've worked with them 25 years. We've done a top team retreat every year. They moved from 130 die casters in the world. Now they're in the top 5, and they just got awarded for the most innovative. I think that in their industry, probably 70% of the die casters have gone out of business in the last 15 years. Why? Because they didn't change. Now the next one is what really makes this different is that it's customized. So Dr. Torr yesterday says, Ron, why don't you license people and make manuals? I say, I can't, because that doesn't allow for Susan's creativity, the organization's creativity. We have some principles. We facilitate a group process with our bare hands, as Edgar Schein would say, and who gave us the concept of process consultation. And it's like it's just got to be in your being. And so we'll spend sometimes 5 to 6 days. Well, with Susan and I now, I spent 3 days with her. I'm going to go back to Europe and spend 3 more days with her and her team. And then we've been working like a couple of hours a day now and then on getting a script that's probably going to be 60 pages to get ready for our transformation event that's going to create a paradigm shift, and Susan's going to get a standing ovation. So the next one. I'm not going to hit them all. Oh, this is the famous model that Susan and I changed. Dissatisfaction times vision times first steps equals overcoming resistance to change. That was Dick Beckert's original formula. My mentor, he coined the phrase organization development at General Mills with Douglas McGregor. And Susan and I have changed that to aspiration rather than vision. And we've added the concept of belief. Because when the organization starts to believe that they really can change and transform because they've experienced a whole new culture in the big meeting where there's been honesty and openness, and they're coming up with management, the really first steps that they know absolutely are right, then a paradigm shift happens. And as my daughter told me when I was trying to explain this to Bob Dufek at Northwest Airlines, she's 21 now, she was 5 years old, Daddy, it's a metamorphosis. It's when the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. I said, where'd you learn that? She said, well, I just saw it on my computer. So, next one is That's the magic. That's the formula. I'm only going to hit a couple more because we've got to get involved. Got to get Susan involved. And first of all, we're going to answer some questions from you. Differentiator is key in terms of relationships. Where was I? Oh, Tom, we were working with one of the state agencies last week, can't remember, and they're getting ready for the new government. And what we said is, if we create transformation, we will build relationships among your group and in your organization that can handle any change. Because as Drucker says, everything changes, everything will change, but the one constant is relationships. The relationships in an organization don't change, and if they can be healthy and you can have meaningful dialogue that leads to action, wow, big stuff. Let's hit one more, Tom, and then we'll get questions. So, we hear so much today about engagement and empowerment. Organizations that don't empower their people are going to be dead. The autocrat executives are going to go. So Google empowers their people. I mean, they're running, they're streaking at 3 a.m. in the halls of Google, and they bring their pets, and they work 24 hours a day without any, set time. But man, those employees produce, and the people from Microsoft want to go to Google because it's a safe environment where they can share their truth, and truth will set you free because the whole thing about this is truth. We're again, Dr. Tortall yesterday says, what's the problem with all these big consulting firms is they never get the elephant. They never address the elephant in the room. I said to Tom, I don't know, between now and then, man, our elephant comes right out. So at Twin City Die Casting, where you saw that top team, I assessed them 2 years ago. I says, are you afraid to say anything to anyone about anything at any time in this organization? 100% said no. They are totally open. The iceberg is above water. That is what's going to make an organization healthy. And the young generation, at least my experience from the Best Buy young people, and my daughter who's 21, man, they like to speak truth. And they're not going to be around an organization like they were at the #1 organization in the country, probably one of the biggest family companies in the world. It's 10 minutes from, as I look out from my woods here, where people left in droves under 40 because there was no safety for truth in conversation. They've changed that now. Okay, let's stop there, and there's more, but you can see them on the resource list that we're going to give you. Oh, I have to say one more. And there's a picture of, there's a standing ovation. In this organization, we did, I don't know, can't remember how many large groups, but I stopped counting the standing ovations after 25. And I challenged Susan to start with a compelling opening to our big meeting coming up in February. And I think Susan, we're going to get a standing ovation. We can't tell them how and why, because the organization must remain confidential, because it's an organization that every person listening here absolutely knows, one of the most loved brand in the world, is that we are going to get a standing ovation as soon as the lights come on. I just believe that that's going to happen, because we're going to start with an absolutely compelling movie of their product. Okay, so now let's talk about questions, right? And
yeah, well,
those
first,
are the rest of the differentiation. Oh, we're going to take a poll first. So give a poll. What degree is there resistance in your organization for initiating system-wide change? Now, the formula I gave you is the formula that overcomes resistance. Now give us your assessment here, and we'll report that back to everybody as to where we're at. And then I'm assuming that you've been writing in some questions. And then Tom and I, well, and Susan, if we can get Susan in, we'll just introduce her. We can answer your questions. And Tom and Karen, you watch the time so we got enough time. And then also I want to check if we can find out some way if Rick Smith is on the line with us, because we may use his case. He says he's not quite ready because he and I messed up on our communication. but we'd just like to interview him, and he just talks off the top of his head. He's about...
We get about 50% of the people having voted. At this point, we'll give another, we're at 60% now. So get your votes in. We'll leave that up for another 10 or 15 seconds to get your votes in on the poll, and then we'll share those results. To what degree is there resistance to whole system transformation in your organization? Okay, getting ready to close the poll. Last chance, get your votes in. And there are our results.
Great. Good. So help me again. 5 is low or high? Oh, low is low. Oh God, look at number 4. Look at number 3. And look at number 5. See? The ideal organization of the future must have no resistance to change. You're not going to survive. Okay, Susan, have you got a question? Or can we get Susan in here?
Yeah, I'm in. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's okay.
Susan, tell us about tell the group about our relationship.
Roland and I have known each other for about 10 years. We met at Pepperdine University when I was doing my MSOD degree. He was one of 2 lecturers, professors, who was teaching us large group technology. And so it's a great pleasure to finally have the opportunity to work with Roland on my project.
And Susan has been leading change in large corporations around the world, and she is doing a journey right now that she started that is just wonderful, and she can answer questions with Tom and I. And then she's going to make a brief presentation on her case, which she and I are very excited about. So Karen, can you give us the first question?
The first question is, how fast can whole system change occur?
Oh, great question. So if Ed Timberlake is on the line, have him let us know. Ed, pardon me?
He is on the line. He is on the line.
Can you ask him, tell him to tell the story about him and I. Can we bring him in?
I did. I have unmuted Ed. Ed, you should be able to speak now.
Tell us about, remember, your CEO said you did research about change, and you went back and said it's going to take 4 to 5 years to change the culture. And you went back to Al, and he said, I haven't got that much time. You want to say something about that, Ed? Can we bring Edgar in?
I unmuted Edgar, so he should be able to talk.
Edgar?
But he may be having some technical difficulties.
Okay, so that's it. So the CEOs, so then Edgar had to go out and do this research again, and we ran into each other at ASTD or someplace, and we said we can change that culture instantly, and we did. And I'll never forget, because Al, the CEO, we were 350 down in Nicollet Mall someplace in a hotel, and Al said, you know, we wouldn't be here unless Ed brought this process here. And at that moment, Edgar got a standing ovation. And I remember he was sitting in the back of the room. He was the only person in the room not standing, and he was red as a beet. Well, we've got him on tape someplace, and on Al, because we made presentations with that case to the National OD Network. So the thing is, it's the fastest way to create change in an organization. It's the cheapest way, and it's the deepest way. Quoting Kathy Danaher. Next question.
Well, we don't have any others yet.
We don't have any others. Well, we
have some shy people, I think.
Okay. So, Tom, we're going to put you on the spot. You ask Susan a question without identifying her company.
Okay. Susan, I know you're midway through the process, right? I wouldn't say midway, but you're into the process now. What would be your greatest takeaway from the process that you've been performing with Rollin to date, up till now?
Oh, okay, so before I answer that question, I'd like to do a check-in process. Am I going to present my case later,
Yes.
or?
Yes.
Or, yeah?
No, in
Because
fact, since we
Yeah.
don't have any pressing questions, Susan, why don't
Yeah.
we be honored with your presentation now?
Because there may
Now
be
the
more
rest
questions.
of you, now the
Yeah.
rest of you, please think. We're going to change the rules. What question would you like to ask personally of the three of us? And as soon as you get that question, type it in so that Karen can see it. But now, so let's go on to the next slide, and we'll talk about our case. Go ahead, Susan. Take us away.
Okay, so hi everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight to talk about change, one of my favorite subjects. So first of all, a little bit about me, more than what we have shared so far. Of course, I'm a graduate of Pepperdine University in 1999, and my first degrees and career were in information systems. And I have been doing change consulting in a global, transnational, and multicultural setting since 1998, and also working in Europe since 2001. And I'm a Canadian citizen of Chinese origin. Next slide, please, Tom.
And she's, I think you're the first person of Chinese origin to have a master's from a bona fide organization development program.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. It's possible.
That's possible. And China, you know, my friends, is going to lead the world very soon. Continue.
Okay, so a little bit about my company. Currently, the company that I'm working with is a global company with about 52,000 employees worldwide. And included in that is 18 nationalities speaking over 20 languages. English is our company's working language. So we all work in English, no matter where we are. We're in the manufacturing industry and headquartered in Europe. And within headquarters, we have 25 nationalities speaking mostly 4 European languages, mainly English, French, German, and Spanish.
And if
Next
I can
slide,
interrupt, if
Yeah.
I can interrupt there, we had an interesting challenge because England doesn't work on Friday afternoon, and we're having our big meeting. We were going to end it on Friday afternoon, and so we had to go and change the whole schedule just for the English. And then we have, you know, we have the Germans who, man, they're all tasked and right to business, and they have an awful time listening to the French talk in circles. And of course the French are great relationship people, and then you've got the French who love to have wine and the English who like to have tea. And so you have all these ingrained different kinds of cultures, and we're really trying to merge them. And then also they all greet each other differently. One shakes hands, one hugs, and one does cheek-to-cheek stuff or something like that. And so
Right.
it's all fascinating. But in my experience, the will is good. They really want to work together. Okay,
And
so
And Roland comes and says, well, we cannot have lunch for more than 45 minutes. We'll have sandwiches. And I said, no way. We're not going to have sandwiches. We have to have a proper lunch for 1 hour at least. So it was a challenge to get these kind of logistics right.
right. So go ahead.
So in terms of our scope, I'm working with the information systems function. We have about 1,300 people worldwide, but we have a significant amount of subcontracting and outsourcing. So the history with this particular function is that it's gone through numerous reorganizations in the last 7 years. So that it's gone through a lot of instability, and without a proper CIO for the last 4 years. And so the function is perceived by the business as too slow and too expensive. And so we have a new CIO that came in about 18 months ago. And one of the first things he did was to completely changed the organization. And what we have now is a one IS organization for all of the world. And the vision of the CIO is to transform ourselves from a software provider to a trusted business partner. And this is a significant change for us. Okay, so I share a little bit about why I chose to work with Roland, why I chose to use whole system transformation. So I myself have been with the company for only 3 years. And during this time, I have walked around, with the question, why is it the problems are known by everyone and no one seems to know what to do or to have a solution, to be able to do something about it. So anyways, I decided that we need a large group interactive change methodology because it is the only thing that's powerful enough given the history of unsuccessful change in the company, not just with the function, but in the company as a whole. And that we have the opportunity of having a very visionary and credible CIO. He's from outside the company, without the history of the company, and also from outside our industry segment. And also there's an opportunity, really for the first time, to work with an entire unit. And I was considering 2 different large group technologies, whole system transformation and appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry, very briefly, is a positive strength-based approach to change, which is very different from, it's called postmodern approach to change, and it's also quite powerful. However, I like the whole system transformation for the very fact that it insists on transformation starting with the leadership team. And I believe that whenever you want to do a system-wide change, that is not only essential or critical, it's actually mandatory. So I really like the approach of insisting that we start with the top. And also, appreciative inquiry is too diametrically, in my opinion, opposite to the prevailing culture in the company, which is a very stuck system that is currently extremely negative. So with those reasons, I decided to invite Roland to come and help me. So Roland is the only consultant working on this project with me. All other resources are internal. So I proposed this approach to the CIO at the end of August, and I got to go ahead with the executive team in the middle of September. And we went off-site in November.
I'd like to interrupt. And a key thing, sorry for interrupting, Susan, but a key thing is that Susan really educated them about change. And so Warren Bennett says that's one of the strategies that a change agent should use. And it's her credibility to be able to relate to her client and the executive team that really made this happen. The CIO didn't even question her. Well, he's a good CIO. He trusts his people. And he says, I hire the best. So he hired the best in Susan. And then he trusted her. So the point to you, or rest of you, is that your #1 job is to market or sell good change to the organization. And the #1 weakness in our competency study is that internal and external change agents and HR people and quality people do not know how to market themselves effectively. So there's a chapter in our new book, 3rd edition of Practicing OD, by Alan Weiss, that talks about marketing. But just go to his website. What's the website, Tom? Do you remember? It's Summit. If you just Google Alan,
Summit Group,
WEISS, and put $1 million consultant, he'll come up. Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Anyways, Roland and I work mostly on the phone and through Skype and virtually until November. Just before the executive team offsite, he came on site, and we did a 2.5-day offsite with the executive team, and they will transform, I have to say. And I have stories to tell, to share, which I have not even had the chance to share with Roland. But anyways, I'll go on a little bit and then I'll share those stories. So as immediately after the executive team offsite, we launched what we call the event design team, which is 13 people. 13 people from around the function representing the 1,200 people. This means that they are from different levels. They are from different nationalities. They are from different locations. And there's non-management and management. So this 13 people is a microcosm of the whole IT organization. And I also have selected 3 people who are called the core event logistics team. And they are the people who is really understanding the design of the event and then designing the logistics behind it. In a large meeting of this kind, logistics is the most important thing. And the idea then would be to, just before the event, we will have the entire team, which I expect would be around 15 people to 18 people. We have planned our event, our summit, for about 300 more or plus people, and that's planned for February of 2010. And as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we have just completed our initial summit design, and Roland will be coming back to work with us for another 2.5 days in January, hopefully to finalize more or less the design, which we know will still evolve until we actually are doing the summit. And the rest of the journey is yet to be written. However, we have already had some signs that things are different. And during the leadership offsite, we did a module where we did positive feedback, but we also did developmental feedback. And one of the executives took the developmental feedback that we gave him and shared with his managers when they had their own workshop. And there I was, one of the design team member is Francois Roland. He was a little Roland. Anyway, and it was most hilarious seeing him he's learned a lot from you already, and he's already using it in this particular workshop with his colleagues. And we also did the same process in the workshop with this executives team, only we didn't do it at the personal level, but we did it at the team level. So that was one thing I noticed, that without me doing anything, they have already been able to do this on their own, without Roland and without me. So I'm very excited about this particular change. And then the other story I'd like to share is that last week, the executive team was together and we had an evening out. And Andreas was the one that did a kind of a story. And this is our first transformation story, Roland.
Great.
And it's written as a fable.
Oh,
and the
wonderful.
title of the story is I Changed a Team. And it's a story about a king with the 3 dukedom. Faster, better, and cheaper, and another king who's is the enemy, and he also has 3 dukedom, and they are called expensive, slower, and worse. Anyways, Roland was part of the character in the story, and anyways, it's I will share that with you, Roland, and you will really enjoy it, I think.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Andre's from Germany. He's from Germany, right?
Yes, he's from Germany, but this is all written in English, and it's really actually very, very, very good. So he says the king was upset, and then there's something about, let's see now. And then the king remembered a wise monk called Roland, and living in the valley nearby, and he asked to search for him. Roland came, and after a while of discussion with the 3 dukes, and a lot of better, faster, cheaper, he completely understood what the problem was. Oh, guys, let's think, he proposed. And then it goes on. The monk started. Understanding your enemy first. What the hell are its strengths? The king speculated. Well, they have 3 dukedoms as well as we. Got good starting point, said Roland. And can you describe them? Well, said the king, one of the duke is slower, another one is the Duke of Expensive, and the third one is the Duke of Worst. Perfect. You have all what you need, Roland replied with a whimsical smile. Can you be more concrete about that? Asked the king. Yes, of course. And then he started to explain. You have no money, so you need cheaper. You need to fight against the king, blah, blah, so you need better. And you have to fight whatever your enemy is showing up, so you need faster. Said the king. And what does it mean? In the kingdom of Shefali, a 4th dukedom, which is clever, would have been useful. But this is a subject of another story. But anyways, it goes on, and it's a really lovely story. Anyways, I think I've said enough. But this is just to show that transformation has already occurred in small scale. And I believe the transformation in the large scale will happen with our 300.
Susan, we had one question that during your presentation you mentioned appreciative inquiry. And what is appreciative inquiry? Can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Susan was just trained at National Training Laboratories with one of the most powerful women, Miss Watkins. So Susan is an expert on appreciative inquiry. Tell us, Susan.
Okay, well, appreciative inquiry is a complete paradigm about change. And so instead of looking at problems, appreciative inquiry focuses on what's working and looking for the best in the system in order to create more of it. So instead of looking at problems, we're looking at what's working and amplifying. The belief is by amplifying and focusing on what's working, we can better achieve our vision and dreams. So it's a process where you discover your strengths, then you dream about what's possible, and then you from there design what you want to create, and then you go about creating it. So very briefly, that's appreciative inquiry.
Right, and I have the best edited book, most selling edited book on appreciative inquiry. It's called Appreciative Inquiry, Change at the Speed of Imagination by Jane Watkins and Bernard Moore. And Susan, that's the person that Susan just studied with at National Training Laboratories where I got my start. And I used that model, and if it's in the book, it's very clear, very practical. You can do it by just reading the book. I used it with MGI Pharma in Bloomington, and the next year they had the greatest leap in profitability or growth of any organization in Minnesota, not because of the transformation effort, just because of their new cancer drug. But that was a wonderful experience because Chuck Blitzer, who was the CEO there, was the most positive CEO I've ever worked with, and it just fit in that work. And then you saw the picture of the team with the white top hats. We used appreciative inquiry in their South Dakota plant. All positive experience, and what that means is you do not identify problems. You do not focus on problems, because here's what happens. Appreciative inquiry was first discovered by Ron Lippitt at the University of Iowa when he was getting his PhD with Kurt Lewin, who founded Organization Development. And Ron's thesis was this: when a group talks about problems, they lose energy. The more that a group talks about aspirations and dreams and visions, the more energy they get. And so that's where the standing ovations come from, is the positive energy going forth. And I have tried so hard to be a pure AI person, but I haven't been able to do it because organizations need to get out their dissatisfaction. They need to vent a little bit. And so what I try and do is when we're assessing people, we try, instead of asking about the problem of communication, describing it, a core team has already identified communication as an issue. We flip it and we say, tell us what we should do around here so communication is better. So there's a flip there. Tom,
Roland?
you want to? Yes, Susan, go ahead.
I just want to add what we're doing in our project is what I call a whole system transformation with an appreciative inquiry underpinning.
Exactly.
So, for example, whatever we do, even when we're dealing with problems, there is an underlying appreciative approach, which is why now people are not so afraid of getting feedback, because feedback can be enjoyable and constructive and useful.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Very good point. Yes. Okay. Do we have any other questions, Karen?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have, I think there's 4 pending here.
Okay, good. And then we've got a case coming up. While we're answering the questions, can we see if we can get Alberto Rossi from Italy on with us? See if we can get him to speak. He can prepare what he knows about whole system transformation or large group processes.
Alberto's online. I've unmuted him, so
Okay,
he
good.
should.
Alberto, can you speak?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
we
good.
can hear you.
You have an assignment. You tell us about your work purifying the water with large group efforts in Beijing, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Great. Okay, so that'll be our case that we kind of come from the participant. So the question, Karen.
The question is, the first one, how can you decrease resistance to change? It's kind of a big
Tom or
question.
Susan, you want to take a crack at that?
Yes, I would like to do that, yes. I believe that you reduce resistance by really seriously involving people. So, for example, I think for the first time, we are using a representative of the organization to help design a summit. Everything we do is really using to include all voices of the system, whether it's a resistance voice, whether it's people are for change, whether they are from management, whether they are from non-management, whether they are, wherever they're from. We try to find as few people as possible to represent the whole. And the whole time we're including all the voices. And by doing so, resistance, I believe, is much less. And in fact, by allowing the voices to share the dissatisfaction, you're actually dissolving the resistance. So
Tom, you got a
this
comment
is,
on that? If
yeah.
you don't, I do.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Susan. You have something else?
No, I was saying that this is very different. What we're doing here is very different from a top-down approach, where you use a few experts and the top telling the bottom what to do and using the cascade and change management approach. There, you have to deal with resistance because people were not involved in identifying the opportunities and designing the solution.
Good. The thing I wanted to add is we've been talking a lot about overall organization change and transformation in large organizations. Susan's case study is obviously a very big effort. One of the ways to reduce that resistance to change is to do you can do the same process in a smaller effort that isn't changing the whole organization or changing from the very top in terms of that strategic. Roland and I just went through a process with an organization where 4,500 people in the field, and they were implementing a social network. They wanted to implement a social networking tool to get a real community going, because these people are scattered out all across the whole United States, and they can be pretty remote and shut off from their colleagues, and wanted to implement this. But there's a lot of social people kinds of issues that come up with implementing a process or a community like that, and that's what we helped them with. Is we went through this, engaged everyone, representatives from all of those different groups, and it wasn't a huge group that we did, but to Susan's point, we engaged them, we got them involved. It wasn't top down. In fact, their goal was to have this be bottom up and very organic in how this grows and how this community develops, and this process was perfect for that. It was kind of a systems IT kind of effort that it was being driven by, but they really understood that this had to be driven by the people, and right from the front we need to get their engagement and their input in order for them to buy in, to take the ball, so to speak, and to move this thing forward, and it's worked wonderfully. And now we're probably going to be talking to that organization from the top around their strategy, because they saw the value in going through the process with us that they went through, and they want to engage everybody in their overall strategy and how do they need it, because they really need transformation, and we'll probably be working with them on that front as well.
And if they don't transform, they could be dead. They right now are the most profitable company in their industry in the world. But because of technology, they got to change.
Right.
And that's fun, isn't there? Aren't they fun to work with, Tom?
They're great. It's a great culture, very collaborative already. They just need the process and the tools to kind of engage with each other, and they picked up on it very quickly.
And to build on that, and also Susan's thing about resistance, Tom, we got to get David Cooperrider, who gave us Appreciative Inquiry, his chapter in my second edition book. And he has a theory there. It's called DAD. DAD it's when the top decides in the closet, decides, that's the D, what the strategy is, what the change should be. Then what they do is they go and they advocate. They become an advocate to the organization for what they decided. They go try and sell their idea, and that's where they get resistance. And then what they do, the last D, DAD, is defend. They go and they defend what they did with the organization, and it doesn't happen. And said, David says you've got to engage the people. You've got to get them involved. And my last word on resistance here, and we'll go to the next question, and that simply is this, that Jackie Starvos, who is one of David's #1 students, and she just influenced my whole third edition with Appreciative Inquiry stuff. She says, we don't deal with resistance with an Appreciative Inquiry approach. We don't deal with problems. And so if you're dealing with resistance, my suggestion is you go use a pure Appreciative Inquiry process. Then you switch it back after you've got the tiger in the cage to whole systems transformation, where you can really start to have the honest conversations. So let's go to the next question.
Well, that does lead nicely into what the next question is, does the transformation process differ depending on the size of the organization that has multiple locations in multiple countries?
So Susan and Tom, you guys want to take a crack at that? Or do you want me to?
You're right in the middle of that right now. Maybe you can give
I
us a
say
little...
yes and no. The greatest transformation system change I've had is with Herb Pilhofer. Pilhofer has created more commercials for music in the state of Minnesota from 1940 until just a couple of years ago, jingles, than anyone. He's a one-man band. And I worked with him on one-on-one, and we've transformed his life. Of course, first we had to do was get rid of the Sound 80 studio, the only studio that was on 27th and 27th in Minneapolis, so he could be free. And so it works with one person, and it works with an entire country, because we are using it there, David and I, to transform Nepal. The new legislature, elected legislature, will use this process. That's the way they do business in their Congress. So the principles from large to small do not vary. And the big difference is when there's small organizations, you only maybe need one large group event. For a large organization, it probably has to go to many. We have a proposal in, Dr. Tor and Tom and I, to the central government of India to deal with a $15 billion rural development effort. where 15% of the money only gets to the end user. The rest of it's corruption, and the mice and the rats eat it, and so forth. And you know, we'll try to get 500 events going. And so that's some of the big difference. Do we want to, Tom or Susan, you want to talk, or we go to the next question?
Well, I think you pretty well answer the question. The only thing I want to mention is the rule of thumb of the critical mass. So when your system is large, then the reason why we do our summit in 300 is because it is the minimum we need in order, the minimum number of people we touch in order to get the sustainment. So.
Right. And the other thing we're dealing with here is that there, probably 2 weeks after they bought the proposal, they got a directive from the top of the corporation to cut substantially the budget. Okay. So what the CIO has said is that if this works, and we know it's going to work, then he says, well, then maybe we can do 500 next year. And the key thing is to keep it going and to have enough success so that the organization wants to keep it going. Okay, we'll go to the next question.
Well, that's actually the next question, Roland. How do you keep the momentum going to keep the innovative attitude once transformation occurs?
Oh, great question.
They're right
Tom,
there
Susan,
with
you
you.
wanna start with that?
How do you keep the momentum going to keep the innovative attitude once transformation occurs?
Do you want me to start and then you guys add on, or do you want to start?
You start, Roland, and then
Sure,
we'll
go
add
ahead.
on.
Billy and Barbara, they have 2 books on large group stuff, which Alberto knows very well, probably even had one of them as a professor. Billy says the greatest sustainability intervention is frequent face-to-face meetings throughout the organization. And so the structure that we like to set up is this, is the design team in Susan's case has already decided that they want to be the core strategic change office of the IT organization. We may lose a few of them, but they'll stay. And so they will be a permanent group long term. And they will meet frequently, and they will assess the entire situation. They'll scan, and then they'll plan, and then they'll intervene, and then they'll evaluate. And they will have a great relationship with the CIO and the top executive team, and they'll recommend things to them, and they'll work back and forth. Now, Tom, we're just in an organization where Kathy and I first did our first large group in Minnesota, God knows, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. No way I was going to go into a large group of 400 alone, even though I've been facilitating small groups for 20 years. And they have a, they call it OVAL, the Office of Vision something. But it's a group of change agents that have been appointed or volunteered, I don't know, but they're the people that are really passionate about change in the organization, and they meet on an ad hoc basis, and they try to keep the effort going. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the sustainability structure. So Susan and I have a follow-up process that we're going to talk about everyone getting involved as to how we're going to sustain this, and we'll come up with a plan that will then go to the strategic change process. Now, we have Edgar on the line, my friend Edgar. He's one of the most valued, high-level quality people I know in my life, honest to God. And what we did in Edgar's case is we decided we were not going to have any structured follow-up stuff. Instead, we were going to let the managers, they all did a store like Byerly's, you know. They were just going to go and do it. And they did it. Because when we came back to the board meeting a while back, the board says, what the heck are you doing? Flying 300 people or 250, whatever it was, into Minneapolis from all over the country to join your 50 people from corporate in Edina. And the second guy in charge says, look, you've been trying to move this line on the financials for the last X number of years, hasn't moved. Look, it just jumped. We believe that's the reason. And so we did nothing structured in that case. I've got so many examples of how you sustain it. What you don't do is what we did with Pacific Power out on the West Coast. Christine and I, my ex-wife, they decided, the follow-up team, without our wisdom, to hire a new change consultant every month to come in and keep things fresh and going. Well, it confused them every month. We had to finally go back and help them get on a sustainable process that they could only use their own internal resources. How do you sustain it? You probably want to have another large group in a year. You probably, what we did at one of the organizations, we did a software program called Tracker, where we had individual change plans, we had team change plans, we had department change plans, we had interdepartment change plans, and we had a system-wide change plan. Whoa! And all of that was run by the project management office, so that any action that was 1 second late in meeting the deadline, the supervisor of that person got an email. And so there's many, many ways. All I can say is innovation will do it. And if it's transformation, that means it can never go back to what it was. And so Kathy would say, who cares about where it goes next? It's going to go where it wants to go and needs to go, because now the relationships are different, the culture is different, and there's a new spirit among the people. And so they may not even do whole system transformation anymore, but they may go off into a whole new area. But we do believe, without doubt, that this process made them take a leap to something new. So Tom or Susan, why don't you make some comment, and then we'll get Alberto in here pretty soon.
I think there's the two things that you mentioned there, Roland, are the things that keep it going. One is there's a follow-on transformative kind of event that you have either annually, or if you go to other places in the organization, in order to branch out to the whole of the system, to key on that word whole, you can't sub-optimize within a whole system. You need to get as many engaged as possible. So that can continue on for quite some time. And Roland's already talked about some examples at Allstate where that's occurring. It's spreading. It's branching out. But coming afterwards, I think to Roland, what you were talking about in terms of program management is key. That's just execution. That's just good execution. That's staying on top of it and going back to the formula that Roland talked about earlier. First steps, in that transformation. In order to get transformation, you have to have those clearly lined up, and then you need to execute on those in order to keep the energy level around, we're actually doing this. We're actually seeing results, and that's what's going to keep the energy level going more than anything and keep you going down that path.
Well, I totally agree with what has been said so far. I believe that we have to repeat the process frequently in order to sustain the change. And really, what we are telling the organization is the people that I'm working with, that this is a journey that never stops.
Yeah. Yes, and for Susan, what's going to happen there is that she has an action plan with commitments and actions, and she will meet then, without me, with the executive team, and they will review where they are at, and then they'll have a conversation about what's next. So I hope we answered that. I have another question, and then we'll go to Alberto.
I think the last question we have is, staff online workers are unbelievers and sometimes resistant to joining in. Any suggestions?
Tom or Susan, you want to start or want me to?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say, because we have a kind of a bit of a situation here as well, that some of the people at the bottom of the front line or bottom of the organization I don't like that term, but that's a way to describe it, are very cynical and are probably reluctant to come to this event. But nevertheless, this is the first time they've been invited even and given the opportunity to participate. So they know that this is different. They can see that it's different. Everything we've done so far is to communicate that we're doing this time is different than previous times. We actually publicly acknowledge, we know that because of history and other reasons, you are cynical, you are non-believers, but come and come and see for yourself, and come and be be willing. Just come with an open mind, and we have people are coming. We also, in our case, ask for volunteers. So we are giving volunteers the preference to join the summit, while at the same time keeping true to the principle of a representation of the organization. So that way we have about 1/3 of the 200 people, 1/3 are volunteers, and they are non-management and management. And then we pick randomly the rest in order to have a good representation. So in that, there are cynical people. There are people who probably ordinarily wouldn't have come. So anyway, so far the process has worked quite well, and everything we do is communicating to them that this time we are valuing their involvement, valuing their voice, and this is their opportunity to really take back, the control of their own destiny.
I have
Ron, can I add one thing to that?
Please.
Just to build off of what you're saying there and what you said earlier, Susan, I think one of the strategies that works very effectively in this whole process is you look for and very, very strategically go after somebody to include on your design team, the event design team that Susan talked about, at least someone that's representative of maybe that critical person that's looking at this process that may always be critical but are influential also in the organization. So
yes.
If you get them involved in that design team, they see the process, they start to become believers through that process. After being their own involvement, you automatically get a lot of other people that come along when they see that person start to engage.
Excellent point, Tom. I forgot about that, and we do have a couple of them on our design team.
And so I have hundreds of examples, and just trust me that rarely is not a person who is involved in the 2.5-day meeting not engaged and excited and involved. Only one example, Department of Agriculture. The resistor on the team that Tom mentioned that we throw there came to me at the first break, and he said, I think we're starting to like this process stuff, and he put his fingers up in quotation about process, because he's an engineer kind of guy, and probably most of the people listening are process people. And he says, I just came from the men's room, and I just talked to the resistant group of the organization, the most dominant group. And he says, you know what? I know who they are because I'm one of them. He didn't know that I knew that he was one of them. And he says, they like this. And the reason is it's for the first time. They're having an honest conversation in a safe environment, and their view is being heard. And that's what people yearn for, is to be heard and to communicate. So enough of that. Can we bring Alberto in? And Alberto, can you give us the highlights of what you've learned with your large group effort? It's really not whole systems transformation, but you used a little bit more of the future search process. And tell us about your rich global experience.
Thank you, Roland. I had the opportunity.
Unmuted.
You hear me now? Yeah. So, this year I had the opportunity to lead a organizational project with Pepperdine University and the which is China's Association of Non-Governmental Organization.
Alberto,
And
it's really hard to hear you. I'm sorry, this is Karen. It's really hard to hear you. We're getting some feedback on your line.
Okay, now better.
No, it's not
Is
any
it better
better.
now?
That's a little better. Try that.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I go back. Just when we this project, this large group intervention was part of a multi-year project with Petroleum University and China Association of Non-Governmental Organization. And they identified the past years as water quality and quantity as an issue that was in need of
Alberto, I'm sorry.
from,
That's Alberto. I'm sorry. This is.
action from a network. No single organization could attack sufficiently the water issue alone. So basically, there was a first conference in 2008, which was just the seed of what we did in 2009 around the water quality. And we used the snowball kind of approach in trying to enlarge the network working around the water. So in 2009, we had a very big participation. We had around 130 participants coming from non-governmental organizations, private enterprises, local government officials, and universities. So we really started kicking off this network, and this network was basically under-organized as any network. And during the event, we were able to use more an appreciative inquiry approach in this moment, more than a future research. We had some element of future research, but we actually designed it together with a planning committee, which was made of a representative of many of these non-governmental organizations. And so we designed it with them, trying to actually adopt some of the methodologies which were developed in North America or to the Chinese culture. And there were significant changes with respect of the use of experts and you know, the power distance issues and within that culture, especially with governmental officials. So we did some adjustments so that we could go along with the event and push our goals. And actually, this guiding group, which was our planning committee, was key to the invitation. We really got lots of energy, lots of participation thanks to them. They got excited, they activated their networks, and we got a very big participation compared to the previous year also. And what happened during the event was incredible. I mean, the energy that was unleashed was impressive, and they finally got a direction. The network was strengthened, and they finally got a direction. They got some strong sponsorship for future activities. So that's my brief overview. There are papers written about this case anyway.
Tom, I just wanted to point out we are our 10-minute time check or 9-minute time check at this point, so we need to start wrapping it up and let these people get back to their work.
Right. Sounds good. Do we want to do the poll, or do we want to just move on? I assume there's no other questions, and we can do this polling question and then wrap up quick.
We had answered all of the questions, so let's go ahead and do the poll.
Sounds good.
And so the poll is, how important does your executive team feel a system-wide journey is needed for your organization? So go ahead and vote. 1 is low and 5 is high. And so 5 would be very important and 1 is not very important. So go ahead and vote. We'll give you there just a minute or so to get everybody voted. We've got 40% of the vote in. So how important does your executive team feel a system-wide journey is needed for your organization? Not very important is 1 and very important is 5. Okay, we'll give this another 15 seconds or so to get the vote in. Okay, closing the poll. And there are the results. So somewhat encouraging that there's nobody at 1.
So good. I'm trying to see through, okay, on the smaller screen here. The highest seems to be number 4.
Yes, 43% said 4, 7% said 5. So it sounds like, and then 29% said 2. That was the lowest.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's a little encouraging.
Yeah. You bet. You bet. Well, no, good. It's obviously extremely important that an executive team gets on board with this process. And again, as we talked about models kind of the way going forward here. So thank you for participating in that.
We do have one final question here. Tools or methods for bringing innovative ideas to the table. If any of you want to take a chance at that or take a stab at that. Tools or methods for bringing innovative ideas to the table.
I think one of the biggest ingredients in doing that is having participation and engagement. That's what this process actually does. There is a lot of facilitated kind of different ways to get innovative ideas depending on the situation, and that's why this process is so customized. But I think the key ingredient that we talk about in again, the whole system transformation is that you have engagement from critical mass in the organization towards getting those ideas on the table, getting those ideas out in the open, and then you're able to kind of pick the best ideas to move forward on. I think Roland always talks about Jack Welch, that being a driver of his at GE, of surfacing the best ideas and then implementing those. And I think he's actually muted, or he can't get on right now. He's muted and he's calling me.
Susan here. I want to add that I think as people in organizations, we always look outside of ourselves or our own our system to find answers, when what we need is to have the belief that within each of us is the innovation that's possible. You know, we create an environment where we believe each of us can be innovative, that the organization can be innovative, and the system can be innovative, and you don't need anything else from outside. And I think that's what we need to create, is the belief of that.
Okay. Yeah, and a resource, just Roland wanted to bring up, there's a book called The Change Handbook by Holman, Holman, that is chock full of tools and ideas and things to bring that out. So that's a resource. So, which brings us to the last page here, resources for whole system transformation. Providing a URL here, www.rolandsullivan.com. There will be this presentation out there, as well as some other resources and ideas and tools for you to use. If there aren't any other questions, I just want to say for both of Roland and I, thank you for joining us. Susan, thank you for your input. We really appreciate you joining us from across the world here today, where you're in a whole different time zone, a whole different part of your day, and we really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Well, and I'd like to thank Tom and Roland for taking this on, our inaugural webinar, and helping us work through some of the kinks. And Susan, thank you too for participating. We really appreciate it, and as well as all of our attendees. We did record this, so it will be available, particularly there were a couple of people that had some trouble getting on early on, and they came in a little late. So I think they'll be really happy that we're recording this and make the entirety available to them. And so I want to thank everybody for coming today and for working with us. I will be sending out a survey for the attendees probably in the next day or so. I'm hoping to do it today, but you know how things go. And we really want your feedback, particularly because this is the first time that we've done this, and we need to get that feedback so we can keep making it better and move forward on it. So thank you everybody for coming.